Hi everyone, this is Emily Leiphart here for Tailored Expressions, and in today's video I'm sharing projects using the ingredients from the incredible new gel press kit. I'm super excited about this kit for several reasons. This was my first experience with a gel press, and it's easy, fast, and so pretty. Plus, this kit includes everything you need, so it's a great value. When you purchase the kit, you'll also get a free online lesson with Lydia, and it's an amazing class. All of the supplies are listed on the store site, and Lydia goes into detail on the specifics of the kit before diving into techniques. Included in this kit are a 5x7 gel press plate, a hinged gel press storage tin, a 4-inch speedball brayer, 20 sheets of gel press paper, 5 tubes of acrylic paint including blue, magenta, yellow, pearl metallic white, and titanium white. You'll also get a bottle of hand sanitizer to remove paint residue from your gel press plate. There are also 4 new stencils and a background stamp released at the same time as this kit, and I'll be using 2 of the new stencils on my prints. I place my gel press plate on the left and have a stack of copy paper on the right so I can roll off my brayer after each creation. I randomly place a bit of acrylic paint in various color combos on the plate and start rolling. I mostly see rolling in one direction along the length of the plate, but I want to move my colors around more, so I roll in both directions to get more variation in the patterns. This is something you'll have to experiment with depending on what kind of patterns you prefer and how you want your colors to spread out across your print. You can even pick up your brayer and hop it along before spreading it again. In many ways, it's random, but in other ways, it's possible to control where your colors go. You can also add more color and keep rolling. All I did was roll off my brayer onto the copy paper to clean it off. I didn't actually wash either the plate or the brayer. The more you use the plate and the brayer, the better they work. Plus, anything that's left behind gets lifted or imprinted onto the next few prints, so it just adds to the interest of each consecutive print. This process is so incredibly fast and fun. I'm officially addicted. I made about a dozen prints in half an hour. On the second print, I used the Wild Willow stencil to make 2 prints. First the stencil itself, and then with the residual paint. However, the acrylic paint dries quickly, so it's hard to get a residual print unless you work very quickly. The nice thing is the paint dries super fast on the prints themselves, so you don't have to worry about having too much space to spread out all your prints while they dry. Adding more paint, especially white paint, will help lift up the residual paints and patterns. I just love how pretty all the layers look. The nice thing is, if you make a print that you don't like, you can use that sheet again and cover it up with more paint. Nothing ever goes to waste with the gel press, not even the copy paper. Cast off from the brayer itself even makes gorgeous prints, and all you have to do is adhere it to a card base or another piece of cardstock to make it more sturdy if you like. You can even use it for die cuts. The second stencil I use is the Make a Dash stencil, and this one is more subtle, but it's nice to use parts of this stencil for a splattered look. You can change up how the prints and stencils look simply by only pressing down on the areas you want the pattern to show up. By layering colors and prints, you can create a lot of visual interest on a single print. As I roll off the brayer after the stencil print, you can see how the older colors are revealed, and if I add more paint, it'll lift these older layers onto the next print. I personally love the splotches and even the white lines left by the brayer edges. Sometimes that's the white paint coming through. You want your paint on the gel press plate to be as thin as possible, so the brayer is your friend here. I wanted to layer the Wild Willow stencil on top of my original Wild Willow print to see what it would look like, and I like the subtlety of the pale colors with lots of white paint on top. The very pink print with some blue and a bit of the Wild Willow stencil in white is one of my favorites from this batch. Towards the end of the printmaking part, you can see how I layer some sheets up to 3 times, especially with the plainer residual prints. Here's a quick look at all the prints I made. There were so many great ones, and it was so hard to narrow them down and pick just 4 that I wanted to make cards with for this video. The first thing I do is trim them down to an A2 size and adhere them to a piece of sugar cube cardstock so they're more sturdy and easy to work with. Now it's time to start designing the cards themselves. For my first card, I'm going to use the On the Block Mom upside down so that it reads Wow. I stamp this in Lollipop ink on sugar cube cardstock. Then I use a powder tool before restamping it with watermark ink and heat embossing it with sparkle embossing powder. After the Wow is die cut, I choose a secondary sentiment from Mini Strips Fun and Funny, which I already had a bunch of in my simple storage for building blocks container. I trimmed down the panel to 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches and used the largest of the digital stitch rectangle stacklets to create a subtle frame around the edge before attaching it to a sugar cube card base. Then I popped both parts of the sentiment onto the panel with foam tape. I used the Gathered Stars die with silver glitter cardstock and use a few of the stars to embellish the card, and it's done. This is very simple but effective and shows off the beautiful gel press print as well as the sparkly sentiment. For my second card, I stamped the big "Oh My Word Happy Birthday" in blueberry ink on sugar cube cardstock. Then I used the Frame in Frame 2 cutting plate to cut this panel. I stacked the cardstock underneath the scalloped portion 2 layers high and left the inside rectangle a single layer so that there would be a bit of dimension for the frame itself. I adhere them both onto a blueberry card base, then use a vellum die cut of the sentiment to line up the letters on the panel. I popped up the bottom portion with foam tape and adhered the individual letters with liquid glue. This time I used my scissors to trim small sections from the Gathered Stars die and adhered them to the card using liquid glue. Again, keeping all the die cut elements and sentiment super simple really shows off the beautiful print. I picked blueberry cardstock and ink to tie into that tiny bit of dark blue on this print. For my third card, I'm stamping "On the Block Cool" in Oreo ink on sugar cube cardstock. When that is done, I stamp the Building Blocks Cool Editions in Oreo ink on sugar cube cardstock. The blue and yellow gel press print that I'm using for this card is so bright and also cool that I decided to feature sparkly shades of summer. I go with the sentiment that reads "You're so cool," and decide that the background needs a subtle texture, which I add by using the diagonal stitch square stacklets. I use the smallest square and run it through my die cut machine 3 times. The first square will be centered around the cool word, and then the other 2 will be positioned above and below that. After the sentiment and sunglasses are assembled, I decide that it needs a mouth, so I use the Build an Emoji dies to complete the face. For the tongue, I used a leftover piece of one of the pink prints, backed by a layer of cardstock. I love that the tongue has a bit of texture too. For my fourth and final card, I stamped the "Oh My Word Thank You" sentiment in sugar cube pigment ink on Oreo cardstock. Then I heat emboss it, first with white embossing powder, then layer it with sparkle embossing powder for a super slick and shimmery look. For this card, I cut a strip of silver glitter cardstock and attached it to the left edge of the card. Then I trimmed the panel down to 4 inches by 5 1/2 inches and attached it flush to the right edge so the silver glitter strip shows. I popped on the sentiment with foam tape and added a secondary sentiment from Mini Strips You're the Best, which I had pre-stamped in my simple storage. Here's a review of all 4 cards. I wanted to tie all of these together in case I decided to gift them as a set, so I made sure to use silver glitter elements on each of them. As it turns out, I ended up using 2 on the block words and 2 "Oh My Word" sentiments. I also used the diagonal stitch dies as frames on 2 cards and the Gathered Stars dies on 2 of the cards. I absolutely loved using this kit, and I'm completely addicted to the ease and fun to which all these stunning backgrounds can be made. I hope you enjoyed this video and you're inspired to create with the gel press kit. You'll definitely want to grab one by October 17th so you can take Lydia's free class. You can find all these products in the Tailored Expressions web store at tailoredexpressions.com. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you again soon.